Yeah, so can we hear me now? Can anyone hear me now? Okay. So I think we are on now. If I'm not mistaken, somebody can hear me. All right. Okay, so thank you so much for that confirmation. The system here is behaving a bit weird, but I'm going to sort that out. However, while I try to sort that out, we'll start the conversation proper because it's been time consuming trying to fix some of this stuff. All right, so we will just start walking through it. This is Academy of Scholarships and Transitions. Thank you all for your patience and for confirming that you can hear me, for staying put and walking through the process with me. Now, today we are going to do something, and what we want to do today is unique. Is unique in the sense that it's going to be helpful to many people, and not just helpful, but also transformational or transformative, if I would say. The reason I consider this very important is because every time everyone looks at education, one of the challenges that people seem to have these days is accepting that education is still useful one way or the other. But if we go through it and we see the value that is in education in terms of looking at opportunities beyond the shores of our various countries, then we begin to find that there is still hope. There is still some hope for education. So, what I want us to do today is to brainstorm, first of all, think about the possibilities that these opportunities can offer you, a fully funded PhD. And usually, when I do things like this, I try to start from a motivational point of view, even though in general, I don't like so much of motivational speeches. But when I do things like this, I can't help but try to be motivational in some way because when people understand the value that is attached to something, they tend more to pay attention to it or to consider it and then get more serious with what it is. So, in the case of PhDs, you are looking at somebody trying to pay your tuition for an entire period of 3 years. And beyond that tuition, in the case of fully funded PhDs, the person is also going to pay your stipend. In some instances, they go as far as even paying for your costs of travel to the country that you are interested in going to. All right. And because of all this, you now begin to weigh the costs in terms of how much money is really involved in what we are discussing. How much money is these people or are these people going to pay or going to spend? Apologies, my slides are not just showing up right now. But what I'll do is that I'm going to send the slides across much later if this is not sorted out at any point during the presentation. All right, so that everybody can still have access to the slides and watch it and go through it in the right time. So we are looking at fully funded PhDs, and my slides are just messed up at the moment because OBS for some reason is not streaming out the content that I've given it to stream out. Unfortunate. But I believe you can hear my voice loud and clear. At least my microphone is not disappointing me. And because of that, I will consider to continue while technically trying to sort out the OBS situation. Now, what is the PhD and why do you want to consider this full funding opportunity? First of all, when you look at fully funded PhDs, depending on the country, you are looking at the entire cost of your tuition. If you look at countries like the United Kingdom, for instance, you are looking at a tuition fee of about, on the average, 16 to 20 something thousand pounds. On a fully funded PhD, the university covers all of those, or the institution covers all of those costs for you. Then, when you look at also the stipend that some of them pay, you find that in some universities, the stipend can be as high as maybe in some cases up to say £2,000, $2,000, and even in the UK, I've seen a scholarship that pays as high as £2,000. Now, £2,000, if you translate that to the Nigerian equivalent, is about 4 million naira, a little bit less than 4 million at the current exchange rate. This is something a school or an institution is willing to give you just for free. All right, please try to pay good attention because of the way the slides are behaving. The promise is that I'm going to send these slides across to all of us much later, and then you can download it and walk back and see the way they relate with the video. Now, when you look at these PhD options, you are seeing a whole lot of money. On the average, the universities or the funding or institutions are spending somewhere around 80 million naira on you. This understanding is critical because it gives you not just the motivation to chase these things, but it also gives you an idea of the competition that's ahead of you and why you need to prepare significantly well for those opportunities. All right, so you are looking at somebody trying to hire you. Think of it as a job, somebody trying to hire you, and this person is going to pay you up to 80 million naira per year. This should give you an idea of why you need to prepare properly to show up in those application processes. And in the real sense, funded PhDs are usually like a job in most of the cases, because you're either being hired by a professor to support a research, a funded research within his team, or some institution is funding your research so that you can contribute to solving a particular problem that is of interest to them. All right, so when you do all of that, you realize that that's why you need to start paying good attention to the degree of the challenges that are associated with it. Now, what are the various types of these funded PhDs? When you look at PhDs, there are a number of options. The first option is the fully funded one, which is going to be our full focus for today. But apart from full funding, there's something called partial funding. And partial funding can be in different formats. It could be in the form of the school covering your tuition cost, and then it could also be in the form of the school covering your cost at the home student rate. That is to say, for instance, in the United Kingdom, that the home students are supposed to pay £4,000 per year. And then the school or the funding institution says, we are going to cover your funding, but at the home student rate, which means you pay the balance of the tuition. It's also a form of partial funding, but in many instances, that partial funding comes also with a stipend. And then what most students can now do is to take that stipend and cover up for the remaining balance of tuition that they have. So in that case, you have a good scholarship that is paying you, but you are taking back from your stipend and covering the cost of your tuition. Then there are some people who go for self-funding. I personally don't think that anybody should go for a PhD with self-funding. This is my personal opinion. It's not to say that if you have the money, you shouldn't do it, but I think that universities should understand the contributions of PhD students and award PhDs free of charge to every student. That's just my thoughts. It could be different people have different opinions on this, but this is my own thinking about it. All right. Then, if you look at the funding options, the only funding option that I would really encourage us to take is that funding option of full funding. But now, let's look at some of the other things. We are building up to something. There's a reason why I start with this kind of emphasis. I'm building up to something that will be profitable to all of us in the end. Very often, there are certain things that people talk about scholarships that discourage a lot of people from applying for scholarships. One of those things is that scholarships cannot be won if you don't know somebody. That's if you don't have a political connection. But my argument against this, which stands true in every circumstance, is the fact that there are many scholarships that are funded from outside your country. And in fact, most of the scholarships that you'll be applying for are funded from outside your country. Now, if a scholarship is funded from outside your country, it means that everybody applying from your country are applying on equal grounds. That is to say, the funding organization does not know you, it does not know the other person, it does not know anyone at all. The funding organization just knows that this person has applied and they are focused on merit, and that merit is what drives their decision making. All right, so I believe that clears that doubt. And if you are one of those people who have had that doubt, get it cleared within your mind. You can win scholarships without knowing anybody, without having any political connections. And again, you can also win scholarships without a first class. I need to emphasize that because there are quite a number of people who think that scholarships are for first class students. Yes, actually, there are some scholarships that will clearly tell you that this scholarship is for first class students. But the PhD scholarships are usually not like that, because at the level of a PhD, there are several factors that come into play. One of those factors is your level of expertise, your research experience, and your enthusiasm, your commitment to that work itself. Because a PhD is not only driven, your PhD success is not driven by your academic excellence alone. Your PhD success is also driven to a large extent by your capacity and your interest in that research area. All right, your interest in that research area. Before we continue, please let us know where you joined this live stream from in the comment section, especially those of you on YouTube. If you are joining us from anywhere in the world, please just let me know in the comment section that this is where you are joining from. I like to have that feeling. I like to be connected with the people and to ensure that everybody is also carried along. In addition to that, it helps the live stream on its own. Now, by the time you've done that, you see that all those things that people say are usually not true the way they say it. But you know that you have these other things that even if you don't have a first class, for instance, there are some other skills, that some other accomplishments that can help push your qualification and push you through to winning that PhD. In one of the videos I made some time ago, I discussed the things that you can do as a second class degree holder to be able to outcompete somebody who has a first class in a PhD competition or even in any other scholarship application. One of those things is to improve certain aspects of your skill set. We're going to talk about those skills just shortly. And in addition to that, you can also do what is called a journal publication or go for a conference and present something. Now, the question becomes, what can you write in a journal paper or what can you go present in a conference? I tell people that if you have your undergraduate research project or your undergraduate graduation project anywhere, somewhere located within your reach, you can always go back to that undergraduate work, repackage it, improve it, and then push it out for publication. It may not qualify for publication in the topmost journals, but the exercise of getting your paper published is not only is not tied to the top end papers, the top end journals. Yes, as you begin to develop in your career, you need to start focusing on the higher class journals. But as a beginner in the writing journey, you can repackage that work and publish it in maybe not the highest of impact factors, but any journal that is indexed in Scopus or indexed in such a way that somebody who wants to refer to your work can easily pick up your work and refer to it. Now, by the time you've got this paper published, if you don't know how to do it, in fact, there is actually a tutorial on this channel that teaches you how to go back to your work and then repackage it and publish it. By the time you've done that, you know that you are already standing at an advantage over most other people. Now, the other thing you need to also understand is that depending on the country where you are applying to, you may have to pay what is called an application fee during your application, and you may also be required to provide a test of English as a foreign language result, and you may also be required to provide what is called GRE. The GRE is mostly for those of us in STEM, engineering, computing, in most of those kind of fields. Sometimes they may require you to provide a GRE. This is uniquely special. This is unique to American institutions and institutions in other parts of the world that run the American system. If you go to the Middle East, for instance, to Saudi Arabia, to United Arab Emirates, to Dubai, most of the schools in those parts of the world will require you to provide that evidence of what is called GRE, all right? Because in most of those places, they operate an American standard of education, and that's why they have those things tied in that format, all right? Now, if you are done with this introductory part, then we'll begin to move on to the deeper conversations. Now, before we move to that extent, I want to also make mention of something. A PhD funding is not only tied to the graduate research assistantship. I know that most of the conversation we'll have today is focused or centered around the graduate research assistantship, but I need to also highlight that there are other forms of PhD funding that you should also be paying attention to. One of those major ones is what is called the government funding. The government fundings come in the form of from your government. It could also come from governments of other countries that are interested in supporting people from your country. For instance, we are looking at, say, the Chinese government scholarship. Under that scholarship, you will find master's degree scholarships, you will find PhD scholarships. You are looking at scholarships from the government of Ireland. You are looking at the scholarships from the government of Japan. You are looking at the scholarships from the government of Hungary, the government of Russia, different countries, even Germany, for instance, through the DAD program. You find a lot of these scholarships that are funded by the government. Apart from that, you find scholarships that are PhD level that are also funded by institutions. When I say institutions, the institutions could be backed by the government. These institutions could also be backed by private entities or NGOs. For instance, the Gates Cambridge Foundation funds PhD scholarships at the University of Cambridge. The PTDF, which is an organization in Nigeria, funds PhD scholarships in the UK, in France, in Germany, in Malaysia, and even back home in Nigeria. Then you see that when you look at these government-funded scholarships, most of them are operated through the Federal Scholarship Board of your country. If you don't know that your country has a Federal Scholarship Board, please, you may want to go dig that up through the Ministry of Education of your country and then figure it out what they have and what they do not have and what they require and what they do not require, so that you can start preparing yourself, you can start applying, and you can start getting used to the application process. All right? Then let's now look at, now that you know all these funding options, let's look at the key requirements for your scholarship, the key requirements for your PhD scholarship in particular. Normally, I talk about this, and this is applicable to every other form of scholarship. There is something I call PAR, P-A-R, is a short form for passion, is a short form for action, a short form for resilience. So we are looking at three words: passion, action, resilience. So everybody who comes to look for a PhD needs something that is called passion. Remember I said I start these events through what I call motivational sessions. That's what we are doing now. But we are gradually beginning to dig into the crux of the matter and the realities that we need to sort out today. First of all, you need passion for something. And I want to believe that everybody who is on this live stream already has sufficient passion for a PhD. And that's why you are here. It's because you've got some passion that brought you to this particular live stream. If you did not have the passion, you will not be here, right? But because you have the passion for it, that's why you came. Now, for the fact that you have the passion, you now need to translate that passion to action. You need to translate the passion that you have to action. And translating that passion to action means that you act on the information that we are going to give out today, or that we are giving out today. If you don't act on the information, then the information remains just within your mind. And if it remains within your mind, it doesn't profit you much. You need to be able to take the information and put that information into action. And when you put the information into action, that's when you begin to see results. Knowledge in itself of how to make money, for instance, does not make you a rich man. What makes you a rich man is putting that knowledge you have into action. That's when you begin to look at yourself and see yourself getting rich. So action is very important. How do you act on PhD as a PhD, as someone looking for PhD funding? First of all, you need to research and find out the professors. You need to understand the area that has funding going into it. You need to also understand how your research interest aligns with the research interest of professors. You then need to launch out to apply. All right, you need to launch out to apply for those opportunities as they open up. So that's your passion. Where does resilience come into this? Resilience is the fact that you may apply for once and not get it. And I would assume that some of us who are here may have applied for PhD funding at some point in their life and did not win it. And if you are here and ever applied for a PhD without winning it, I want you to just drop a message in the comment section. Don't let it, don't get ashamed for it. Just drop a message in the comment section. Say, I have applied before and did not win it. So there are lots of people who have applied for PhDs and did not win it in the past, but you need to be resilient enough to come back to apply again. Resilience now means that you don't just repeat the same thing. You have to now go back and look at the feedback, look at what did not work for you, and then improve on what did not work before launching out to reapply again. So this live stream was supposed to be solely on YouTube, but because we've not been able to manage our OBS properly, then we are trying to stream across other platforms to ensure that everybody is carried along in the process. Then that's it for that one. When you have these three things, then you are closer to a PhD than the average person. Apart from this, you are looking for PhDs in across continents. Then you need an international passport to be able to apply. You also need what is called an academic CV to apply for PhD. You also need what is called recommendation letters. And I know that a number of us may have left school a long time ago, and when you hear recommendation letters, you get kind of agitated about it, but it's very simple. The world has become a global village. You can always reach back to your former supervisor, to anybody who was part of your lecturing team, and then get a second recommendation letter from anybody who is within your workplace, who has supervised you, a colleague or a manager. That could be a recommendation. However, I need to lay emphasis on some of these things. I'm not going to talk much about academic CV because there's a different tutorial that we have on the channel that discussed that academic CV in detail. So you can always refer back to that if you have challenges. I'm not going to go so much into it, but you need an international passport and you need recommendation letters. Now, on recommendation letters, there is something important that you need to know about it. Don't just let your recommenders or your referees write up a vague recommendation letter for you and submit. All right? The reason you don't want to do that is because every application has certain critical factors that they are interested in getting from your recommendation letters. Sometimes they want your recommenders to address the area of your capacity for research. In some other instances, they want your recommenders to address your attitude to work. So before you reach out to somebody as your referee, you need to understand what exactly is required by this particular application. And then it is your job to go back to that person and explain that this is what these people want you to assess me based on. All right, you are not trying to bias the opinion of the person about you, but the person needs to get clarity on what he or she is trying to do. Because otherwise, you could run into this situation where somebody just takes up a generic recommendation letter, puts your name to it, and submits. That becomes a weak recommendation that does not in any way get you a scholarship. And then the person is not really the one losing. You are the person who will definitely be on the losing side. But if you take the time and make the commitment of explaining what is required to your recommenders, then you get a recommendation letter that will be useful and will help you to win a scholarship. Then you need your transcript. I believe we all know this, and I'm not going to lay so much emphasis on what a transcript is. You need your certificate, obviously, your previous education. But let's also get something clear. You are applying for a PhD scholarship, but PhDs are typically not just for people who have done their master's degree before. All right, in most of these developed countries, you have the option to do what is called a direct PhD, where you move straight from your bachelor's degree to a PhD admission. All right, if you have heard about this before, drop a message in the comment section, say, I know about this. If you go to, thank you so much, Girl G, for the stars. That's on Facebook. Thanks so much. This is actually the first time I'm getting stars on Facebook. I've never asked for it, I've never demanded it, and I've never received it. Thank you so much for that. I will try to take a screenshot of this moment because it's very unique. Now, if you are looking at getting your transcript, you are looking at, what was it now? So you are looking at your certificate and your application. Somebody who has not even done a master's can actually apply for a PhD and get it. And this is not fairy tale. I know a guy who came to the company where I used to work in Lagos. He came for youth service. And before he finished, in fact, before he went halfway into that youth service, he had already secured a PhD admission in the United States of America. Eventually, he did not even finish his youth service with us. He moved to another place because he was trying to see how he could manage his time and be able to pursue that other opportunity. I know another guy from University of Benin in Nigeria who moved to the US under the same arrangement. So if you have a bachelor's degree, you can use that bachelor's degree to apply for a PhD opportunity. Again, I want to also emphasize this with an example of what happened in the company where I used to work in Lagos. We wanted to hire somebody who had a master's degree in applied sciences, applied physics, or applied maths. And we put out the advert, and eventually we got somebody who had a master's degree, but at the time he was committed to a PhD somewhere. And we had these other two guys who had a bachelor's degree in mathematics or applied mathematics, and these were the guys that we eventually hired to fill that position. Imagine that those guys had not applied because somebody said that a master's degree was required. They would not have got the job, and the company would not have got the person they wanted, because the other guy who had a master's degree and applied was committed to a PhD, and we were not willing to hire somebody on a part-time basis for that position because of how critical and how important and demanding that position was for the company. So these are some of the things you need to understand. And when you see a PhD, if it says that a master's degree is an added advantage, that automatically tells you that somebody who has a bachelor's degree can apply for that PhD and compete for it. And there are people who have their bachelor's and have done a lot of things, publications, different things that they have done in the past that boosts their profile. That's why on Academy of Scholarships and Transitions, we try to teach people how to write, because I believe that everybody who is coming out from a bachelor's degree should be able to have at least one review paper published somewhere, because it changes the game for you when it comes to all these scholarship applications. The other thing that you require is what is called a research proposal. But we need to be clear on this. A research proposal is not a compulsory requirement for PhD applications. All right? And there's something else I'm going to talk about research interest, right? But a research proposal is not compulsory. In some scholarship applications for a PhD, all that you need is a personal statement. In fact, at this moment, there is somebody one of our followers who is based in Canada, who is just in that particular kind of arrangement. The school or her supervisor is not asking for a research proposal, and the reason is because these supervisors already have a research that is mapped out. Because how do they get the funding in the first place? They go out and they apply for a research grant somewhere. In the process of applying for that research grant, they submit a research proposal. All right, and when they hire people to deliver on that research, they're hiring people to deliver various aspects of that research proposal that they submitted during the grant application. I believe that makes sense. And if professor is not going to take his money that he has secured for a particular funding or for a particular research to now fund your own research that is an interest contrary to his. I'm going to speak more about this, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that it's not a case of I must always submit a research proposal for every application. In fact, one of the reasons why people don't win PhD scholarships is because they are too focused on their own research interest and too focused on their own research proposal. Sometime, I think last year or early this year, I had a conversation with someone based in Nigeria, and we were talking about the person's PhD applications and trying to look at possible reasons why the person has not got that funding. And one of those reasons I could see was her research interest, because she had her own research interest, and the schools she wanted to go to were not funding that particular area. If you stay rigid on your own research interest, you may be shooting yourself on the foot, because no professor is going to divert funds to fund your interest when he secured that funding to fund something different. Now, on research proposals, if you are applying for self-funding, or the application has said you need to develop a research proposal around this topic, those are the times when you actually need to go deep, dive deep into the process of developing a research proposal. And by all means, do not use artificial intelligence to write your research proposal and copy paste it. They're always going to detect it when they run it through their plagiarism softwares. And do not plagiarize. There are feedbacks that I've heard from people when they have been told that their PhD application cannot proceed because they found evidence of plagiarism on their work, on their proposal. So you don't want to plagiarize, you don't want to use AI and copy paste. You can use AI to as an assistant to refine your ideas, to suggest areas of gaps and all that. There are ways you can use it, but that's not the subject of this conversation. Do not copy paste directly from AI into your research proposal where you have to write one. All right? So let's keep moving. By the time you have this fundamental understanding, the question becomes, how do I go from knowing these things to translating them into an actual funded PhD? And I'm going to now narrow down the conversation in a way. But before I narrow it down, I want to say something. You need to understand that all the funding organizations that you will find in the world, whether it is scholarship at master's level, at bachelor's level, at PhD level, they are all always driven by a particular agenda or a particular interest. All right? When I was going to Russia many years ago to go do my bachelor's, I had applied to go and study electronic engineering, because that was the course, that was my passion. In fact, every time I talk about this, I somehow feel a little bit of, maybe I can still go back to it, but somehow maybe I'm too far gone from electronics. All right, because I had my life mapped out in that direction. I wanted to do electronic engineering, major in computer hardware engineering, and then build up towards software engineering, because in my mind, I wanted to be the first African to build a complete computer. I wanted to understand the hardware and understand the software, and then move on to integrate that idea into building an actual computer. And I was working on it. I used to study motherboards when I finished university, when I finished my secondary school education, and then I learned all this computer maintenance and all that. But the goal of going to learn the computer maintenance was to understand the motherboard itself. That was the core focus, even though it was outside the reach of that conversation in those places, but I wanted that. However, at the time, I think the federal government of Nigeria wanted to send more people to study oil and gas engineering. So when I won the scholarship, the offer they gave me was to go and study oil and gas engineering. It happened to my friend who wanted to study chemical engineering, happened to my other friend who wanted to study, I think, civil engineering. There were quite a number of us at the time who were moved into studying oil and gas engineering. Don't ask me how many of us are in Nigeria working in oil and gas today. That's a different conversation. But the point I'm trying to make is that every scholarship funder has an agenda. They have something they are trying to achieve, And before you start jumping into applying, you need to go back and understand the agenda, the thought process, what they are trying to get to, the goal that they've set for themselves. If their goal is to push an agenda for renewable energy, you don't go there and submit a proposal or submit a statement of purpose that says that your passion is in fossil fuel. If their goal is early child education, you don't go there and submit a proposal or a statement of purpose that says that your interest is in adult education. If you do that, one of two things will happen. Is either that you will not find a supervisor who has the skills and the capacity to supervise that particular research in that particular institution, or you find somebody who has the capacity but does not have the funding to accommodate your interest. And that way you lose out of that particular application. So you need to understand the mindset of the funder. Put yourself in the place of the funder and try to think of it like they would think. Who will you give this scholarship to if you were in the shoes of the funders? If all of these things I'm saying are making sense to you, drop a message in the comment section, say go ahead. All right, so that's one thing you need to understand. And that's idea of researching the institution, researching the funders, brings me now down to the narrower conversation we want to have today, that is called graduate assistantship offers. Now, in graduate assistantships, there are three main categories. There is the graduate teaching assistantship positions, there is the graduate research assistantship positions, and there is graduate administrative assistants. The graduate research assistants are the ones we want to really focus on today, but just for you to know, the graduate teaching assistants are the ones who go to help with teaching activities, maybe demonstrations in labs and all of that. But if you get into a school, they can also offer you a graduate administrative assistantship position, where, for instance, you are hired to be the assistant to the dean, or maybe the school's receptionist, or maybe to work in the school's library and something of that kind. But most times, the graduate administrative assistantships would come when you have already gotten into the school. That means they don't really come as fully funded scholarships from the onset in most of the cases. But the graduate research assistantship is what will always come to you as a fully funded scholarship. And why do I like this particular scholarship group so much? Number one, the graduate research assistantships in almost all the cases I know will never require you to go back to your country after your studies. That means it is a short japa plug, if I use that expression. For those of you who are not from Nigeria, japa is like immigration. It's a short pathway for you to immigrate. Then also, these graduate research assistantships, they are open in different sectors, different fields, different areas of specialty. Unlike some of the other programs, like the scholarship that is funding my own PhD is restricted to areas of study that have relevance to the energy industry, to the oil and gas industry primarily, and then to the broader energy industry, which includes renewables and all that. But in the graduate research assistantship, you can find graduate research assistantship in almost every field where you have active professors. All right, so long as you have professors who are active in that field, you can find graduate research assistantships in that particular field, because the active professors will always be seeking out for funding. In fact, just today, I saw a publication from my own school that one professor and a team of researchers in my school had secured funding of about £800,000 for a research program in hydrogen. And so if you are somebody who is looking for a PhD position in hydrogen, these are the kind of people you need to start targeting, because they have this funding and they're going to definitely need students who will work on various aspects of that hydrogen project to be able to deliver on their commitments that they made during the funding application. All right, now let's narrow down to the graduate research assistantship. The other benefit is these scholarships are well paid. In most of the countries, you are not going to get anything less than £1,500. £1,500, $1,500 if you are fully funded as a graduate research assistant. In the UK, these graduate research assistantships are generally referred to as studentships. So if you are interested in coming to the UK, you might see them advertised as studentships, but in most of the other places, you see them advertised as graduate research assistantship. Research assistantships are most popular in the United States of America. Somebody is joining us all the way from China. Welcome on board. The United States has the most of these graduate research assistantship. The reason is because there are more schools in the US than any other country of the world, and there is a lot of funding going into these places. Now, narrow down to graduate research assistantship. Somebody say graduate research assistantship in the comment section. All right, I've told you why I like it. I believe you like it now. And if you like it, just say graduate assistantship in the comment section so that we move on to the rest of the conversation. So when you look at the graduate research assistantships, the first step to winning a graduate research assistantship is you trying to conduct a research on the possible supervisors. Conduct a research on the possible supervisors. Somebody is joining from India, somebody is joining from Ondo State, somebody is joining from China. There are people joining us from practically across the globe. So welcome, depending on where you're joining us from. You are very welcome to this particular conversation today. Now, the first thing you do when you become interested in graduate research assistantship is to research the professors. Say, for instance, I am interested in a graduate research assistantship position today. I want to look at the professors that are in that field. All right, conventionally, I would say you want to research the areas that have funding. But I'm saying you start from looking at the professors in that field, because when you look at the professors in the field, you easily get an idea of which area of your course has funding. So I am an oil and gas engineer, for instance, and if I am looking for graduate research assistantship today, what I'm going to do is look at oil and gas engineering professors. And when I look at them and I see their profile on the websites of the universities, on their social media handles, and on Google Scholar, I'm going to get a good idea of where these people are heading to. What are they doing now? What are the most commonly published papers about? Are they about are they about drilling for oil and gas? Are they about reservoir management in oil and gas? Are they about alternative usage of reservoirs, oil and gas reservoirs? By the time I see what is the trend, I can now begin to align my research interest. Now, remember that old saying that a beggar has no choice. When you're actually looking for a fully funded scholarship, you are somewhere at the mercies of the research, at the mercies of the funders. So you don't want to have a rigid research interest. I'm going to keep emphasizing this because it's very, very important. And again, it's against the tradition, it's against the norms. Because most people say, have your research interest. I am saying, don't stay rigid with your research interest. Look at the research areas where money is going to. Research follows the money, and everybody who is looking for fully funded research positions should also pay attention to where the money is going. And one of the ways you determine where the money is going to, if you are confused about it, is to look at the professors in that particular field. So how do I do it? Typically, I love to use LinkedIn a lot. I use LinkedIn a lot. I've used it severally. In fact, practically all the professional jobs I've done had something to do with LinkedIn. I've used it for sales. I've used it for finding jobs. I've used it for different things. So I love to use LinkedIn a lot. But LinkedIn is not the only place where you can do what I'm just going to say now. But if I go to LinkedIn and then I type professor in, say, physics, I would have loved to demonstrate this in real time, but because of the OBS situation I had, this is just making me talk too much. But follow the conversation, you will get the point I'm trying to make. You go to that LinkedIn search bar and you type professor of physics. There's also a video on my YouTube channel that discusses this. Then you're going to see different options, and LinkedIn would let you search those professors by their location. It will also let you search those professors by their institutions. So I search for them, and I find like say 5 professors in the United States. I find 5 professors in the UK. Ideally, I do the 5-5-10-10 strategy, where I'm looking for 5 schools in all at least 5 countries, at least 5 schools, and then at least 10 professors and 10 posts. There's an explanation to this that I've just said now. But what you do is you go there, you find those professors, so you track them. You can follow them to the websites of the universities that they work in, because often in the website of that school you are going to see their research output, and in that research output you will see areas what they have done before. You will also find what they are doing today as ongoing research. And so you will also see the fundings that they won, and you can always look at the funding that they won and see the time frame for that funding. Some of them would have finished, some of them will be ongoing, some of them will be funding that they have just applied for. Now, by the time you've seen that a professor has an ongoing funding or has just applied for a particular research grant, those are the kind of professors that you need to focus on. Now, as an expo, if you are trying to come to the UK and you want to study something in hydrogen, there is a professor in my own school who has just won with a team £800,000. All right, so this is somebody you know that if you can align with his research interest, you have a potential of getting into that research team, because at the moment he really needs people. And that's the way the research thing works. It's not just that you need the scholarship as most people think. The professors actually need you. So it's not a case of they are going to reject me, they are not interested in me. They are actually interested in you. But you also need to remember, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is competitive and many people are applying. So you need to understand what we are discussing today to be able to get an application that stands out. Now, you go in and you research these professors. You have found the professor, you have found first of all the areas that have funding. Now, you want to go deeper into the professors and understand some of the work that they've published in the past about these areas. Because the things I'm going to say today will change your mindset in a number of ways. When you write your cold email, which we're going to talk about later, you find that many of the people who send cold emails send something that is almost the same. All right? They send something that is very uniform, very much looking alike, because they are working with a particular template. They have a template that they've got from somebody, and what they are doing is just fill the blank spaces. And at the point of, after filling the blank spaces, they send it out to these professors. And some professors, if they are honest, will tell you that they get this kind of thing severally. They get many of them. They get many of these things that are similar, and because they get many of them that are similar to themselves, they always know that this person is not being very original, not being very real, and they would prefer the people who come as very real, very original. How to become original in your research, in your cold email and your research proposal is what I'm going to tell you just now. Pay close attention to it. Very critical. Now, you go on to look at that professor and you find some of the work that he has done. Remember, you already found that he has funding in this particular area. I mentioned that there are other funding institutions and you need to look them up, investigate them as well. But we are narrowing down to funded graduate research assistantship, because that's like the one that cuts across every other person who is listening to this particular live stream at this point. So you have looked at that professor, then you go on to what is called Google Scholar, or any place where you can find the person's publications. But Google Scholar is always the best because you can filter. You go to Google Scholar, you see a bunch of publications that the person has done in the past with various number of references, citations, and all that. What you do is go to the place that is here. I wanted to demonstrate these things, but OBS is failing me. So you go to that site. It's always by the right-hand side. You will see year of publication. You click on that year, and then the Google Scholar will sort the person's publication by the year of publication. So the most recent publications will come up. Now, those most recent publications are the things that will give you an idea of what that person is doing, in addition to what you already saw on the website, because the website is going to be general. It's not going to be very descriptive to the details of what can help you get a proper cold email and a proper proposal or a proper statement of purpose that convinces that person to give you that scholarship. So you look through that, those most recent papers, look like 2-3 of them. And in each of the papers the person has published, you start looking out for what has this person done, because it gives you a ground for conversation. But most importantly, you are looking at what has this person not done in this research that fits into that description he already has on the website. Let me drive the point home. So somebody has said he has secured funding for hydrogen production. And the person has published a paper that says, oh, I have now conducted experiment on trying to understand how temperature affects or the productivity of electrolyzers. That's what the person has done. And that person has looked at a temperature range of, say, has looked at room temperature, for instance. And room temperature in the country where the person lives is 19 degrees. Room temperature in your own country is somewhere around 23 degrees or maybe 30 degrees, depending on the season. And what you now want to see is, say for instance, that you would want to go there, and there is that knowledge gap that exists in the fact that the person has not tested those variables. And if you manufacture an electrolyzer solely on that temperature range of 19 degrees as room temperature, then your electrolyzer will only be useful within that specific region of the world where room temperature is 19 degrees. So you go to write to that person and you are saying, well, I've read your paper, I am interested in your work, and I understand that this has been done, but you are also very interested in this and looking at the global scale of this particular research or the global perspective of this particular research, and you are wondering if you would be interested in looking at maybe varying the temperature ranges from, say, 19 degrees to 20 degrees to 30 degrees to reflect the global scale, so that this electrolyzer becomes robust enough to be able to operate in any country of the world where it is sent to. And this is a research you are interested in taking up. What you have shown to that professor is not just that you know him, it's not just that you know his work, but that you have done a thorough analysis of his work to be able to identify what could be done to improve his work. There was a video I posted recently on Facebook where I was saying that when you think about scholarships, you should not be selfish, you should not be self-centered. You should think about the team and think about what you can contribute to the team that has not been done. The easiest way you get to do that is what I have just told you now. So you go back and you read through those papers to the point where you can identify the limitations. And sometimes you don't even need to go too deep, because in most of the journal papers, you will have a list of future work, recommendations for future work in some of the papers. And if that person has those recommendations, part of those recommendations is usually the work they want to do next. In the paper I published sometime earlier this year, one of the future work that was recommended in the paper is the part of the work that I am doing now. So most times when you find recommendations in a paper, some of them are the things that they plan to do next, and it could be that student who gets hired to deliver that next phase of the work. I believe this makes some sense to you, and this is also giving you an understanding of how to make progress. We're going to have questions, and remember I told us to buy data, because I don't do this all the time, but anytime I make time to do it, I spend my time to get things cleared up and to get these things very, very properly done. Now, if you have not shared this live stream, for those of us on Facebook, please just hit the share button. It's easier to share from there than for people on YouTube. And if at the end of this particular tutorial, the only thing you can do as a thank you is to just copy the link of one of the videos we have on YouTube and share it out on your WhatsApp status. There is one that is a general scholarship tutorial. There is this one that is for PhD. There's one that is for professional networking. There's one for CV writing. There are different videos on the platform. Just copy one, the link to one, and put it on your WhatsApp status. That will thank you enough, and that will be you helping us to achieve the goals and the major reason for setting up Academy of Scholarships and Transitions, to help as many people as possible, to educate as many people as possible, and to guide as many people as possible. Thank you so much in the trust that you are going to do that. Now, you have researched this professor. This is the key, the fundamental. The next thing you want to do is to align your research interest to his. I want to lay a special emphasis on this again. When I finished my bachelor's degree, I was looking for scholarships to go to Canada, to the US, to Australia. I got a couple of offers from some of these places, like admissions without scholarships and all that. There was one from Canada that was promising that if I come in, University of Alberta, then I could get like an assistantship position while I'm already in the school. But I began to understand something. That is actually where I got this message clearly, that you need to align your research interest with the research interest of the professors and the research interest of the funders. Because I studied, my major is drilling of oil and gas wells, for those who know what it is. But at the time I was finishing, most of the funding in oil and gas was going into what was called enhanced oil production, and the second part was shale oil, the heavy oil. That was the boom, the beginning of the boom of the heavy oil in the US and Canada. Those who follow oil and gas news will know what I'm saying, but this is just jargon. However, the message that is general to everybody is that if your research interest is not aligned, you will struggle to get funding. But the moment you begin to align your research interest with the research interest of these supervisors, then you begin to see yourself coming close to it, getting interviews here and there, getting calls here and there, and getting invited here and there to interview. Now, this is not to say that you should go and take a research interest that's completely uninteresting to you, because you will struggle to go through that. All right, PhD is like 3 to 4 years. In some cases, people do it for up to 5 years. You don't want to do something that you are completely uninterested in. But if you are interested in education, that interest in education should be flexible enough to fit into adult education and to fit into childhood education, depending again on your long-term career goals. If the long-term career goal shows opportunities are more in one area, then you may want to look at another university and another professor who probably has something aligned to your own interest. It's a more difficult way to go about it. You either look at a professor whose research interest you can align yours with, or a professor whose research interest already aligns with yours. But the point of the matter is that there has to be an alignment of research interest between yourself and the funder or the professor before you can get into that fully funded position. Nobody is going to give you a funding for something that is not of interest to them. It never happens. And everybody I know who has tried it always comes back with a story of this did not work out well. So you don't want to be in that position. So you align your research interest. The next thing is, after you've aligned your research interest, then you need to get in touch before submitting an application. Getting in touch in this case is what is called cold emails. All right? And you need to also realize that in many of the schools, the scholarship application deadlines are usually earlier than the actual deadline for admission. So admission might be closing in January, but the deadline for those who want to be considered for graduate research assistantship is like December. But before this December deadline, you want to have reached out to a professor. When I say professor, think of it as any lecturer with funding. The person could be a doctor, an associate professor, or anything. But for the simplicity, let's just use professor. Now, the person has, you need to have reached out to that person and secured an agreement with the person that he finds interest in funding or he finds interest in supervising your work, and that he has that funding to be able to cover you before you go on to submit an application. It's very important. In fact, it's so important that in some schools, they won't even consider your admission if there is no professor in the school who has indicated interest and capacity to supervise you. Why is that reason? Why is that? The reason is because the professors have like a workload limit. So every professor has like maybe, depending on the school, maybe a maximum of 6 students, a maximum of 12 students that he can be the principal supervisor of in a year. And if that person already has funding but has saturated that number, he can't take you on directly. He might want to refer you to a colleague and then become your second supervisor or something like that. But you need to reach out early enough to these supervisors. This is a scholarship application season now, and it is the good time that you need to start reaching out to these particular supervisors. You reach out. Then after you've reached out, you remember how we talked about action before. You need to now take the action of applying. You need to take the action of applying. So these are the things, the key steps that you need to take towards that scholarship. After you've applied, there's going to be an interview somewhere on the line. The interview could be, depending on the country of your location, the interview is mostly going to be virtual. And that's why I'm going to talk about interview skills just shortly, because it's very important. Now, if you have done all these things, the things that you need to have in that process of getting to that funding will include evidence of your research skills. These are the things that will help you stand out. And these are the things that will go into your cold email and even go into your statement of purpose or your personal statement. You need to have that evidence of your relevant research skills. And when I say relevant research skills, I mean skills that are directly useful in research. And you can have a research skill that's relevant in some other fields, but it's not directly relevant to the particular work this individual is doing. For instance, all your life, you've had your research as lab-based work. And now you're applying to a professor whose work is simulation-based. Even though you have research skills, you don't just say, I have worked in the lab and so I am a good fit for this position. You now need to look at the multi-purpose skills, the kind of the soft skills you gain from the lab that will still be applicable to that simulation-based study. For instance, your skill of technical writing, your skill for maybe presentations, because most of those professors will always look for somebody who has evidence of technical writing, capacity for presentation, and that is even part of the reason I think they interview you before you get into a PhD. Apart from trying to prove that you have the skills, you have this, you have that, judging your ability to present in that scenario or to answer questions in that atmosphere of interview is also part of the reason why they actually interview you, because a professor wants somebody who can write journal papers, because it has a lot of benefits to the universities that we can't go into now, but they want somebody who can write. And they want somebody who can present, because you may need to go represent that team in external conferences. All right? So you have those skills that are relevant. And some of these skills you can start developing by yourself. Presentation is something you can develop by yourself. Technical writing is something you can start developing, working on by yourself. If it's difficult for you, you go through the videos we have on technical writing and start mastering it gradually, so that you can claim to have those skills when you are applying. The other thing you must also learn to do is interview skills and good presentation skills. For some reason, my slide is not working, but when you look at my slides, typically, I don't do slides that are bullet point based. And it does a number of things to me. When I want to do my slides, I try to think, I know the points, but I don't just want to put the points as bullet points. And sometimes, if you do the bullet points, you find that you are writing too many words. But by the time you begin to bring in some infographics into your design of your slides, you see that you are going to be shortening the number of words that you have. And that's why, for instance, I can do 10 slides and run a presentation for 2 hours on those slides. Because the slides are talking points. They are not just for you to list everything. These are some of the things you need to learn in your presentation skill. Presentation skill goes beyond just knowing how to talk to people, how to make eye contact, how to answer questions, and how to speak. They go back to the design of your PowerPoint slides if you need to design PowerPoint slides. And the moment you tell yourself that you don't want to base your slides on bullet points, you will see a different mindset coming into your mind, a different innovation coming into your mind on how to prepare your slides. I do this, I know how it works, and unfortunately, I'm not showing you my slides now. But if you have seen any of my slides in the past, you will find that they are not bullet point based slides. All right, so you need to also learn how to build networks as somebody who is looking for fully funded PhD positions. And your networking in this case, I've talked about the 5-5-10-10 strategy in other videos. I don't want to dwell on that. But I want to highlight the fact that your networking is going to be on 3 dimensions. But for the sake of the people who are looking for PhD, the 2 critical dimensions of networking are just like the critical dimensions of networking are from your mates upwards. So your mates, because you are chasing the same thing and sometimes they see opportunities and they share with you. But from those who are already under that supervisor to those who have been under that supervisor, and then to the supervisors themselves. The people who have been under the supervisor, the people who are currently under the supervisor can give you an idea of who that supervisor is. And it's always advisable that even if you are going to fund your PhD by yourself, you try the best you can to ask questions about the supervisor you are going into his hands or her hands, because a supervisor can destroy your PhD and a supervisor can make your journey through a PhD very smooth, very easy. Now, but all those people who have been under that supervisor, when you get in touch with them, you can always find them, because when you go to the website of any university, under that professor's profile, you will find his previous students and his current students. You can then take the names of those people, go to LinkedIn, find them and connect with them, or send them an email. All right, but somehow emails are easier to neglect than LinkedIn messages, because when somebody has a LinkedIn connection request, everybody wants to grow, or most people want to grow on LinkedIn. And because they want to grow, they tend to accept your connection request. And once they've accepted your connection request, you can open a line of conversation with them. It's relatively semi-formal, and you can manage that through. But you can send an email to somebody that the person decides to ignore. The person never looks at it, he doesn't know who is sending it, or it goes to the spam folder of the person. He doesn't even see it. She doesn't see it. But on LinkedIn, the connection request will always pop up, and the person, in most cases, if it's somebody who is interested in growth, will accept it. So it gives you a line of communication. You can send an email. You can also reach out on LinkedIn. But by the time you do this, you can start asking that person questions. In fact, the people who are currently under that supervisor can give you insight. Like what I've told us today, that somebody in my school secured £800,000 funding. You probably will struggle to find this on the internet. But if you spoke to somebody like myself who is within that school, I can tell you that, okay, this professor in my school has this money, and this other professor who is supervising me has this interest, or he's chasing this funding. So you have that expo to start looking at how to refine your interest and where to start chasing. Because in fairness, if somebody doesn't have funding to provide you a scholarship, and you are wasting your time sending the person email, you will never get funding, because the person doesn't have funding. So you need to learn how to network, and professional networking is something I've taught on this platform as well. There's a reason why I did that 3-day series that time. First one was on scholarships, second day was on CV and SOP, and the third day was on professional networking, because everybody who is looking for a scholarship needs these 3 things. And once you can master these 3, you're closer to a scholarship than the average 50% of humans. If you can master these 3 things, know the scholarships that are available and how to win them, know how to write a good CV and a good SOP, and then master how to build networks, you are closer to a scholarship than most of the people. Then for the interviews, I talked about it already. And then you also need to build up your writing skill. As I mentioned, your writing skill is what will give you a publication. Your writing skill is what will make your SOP stand out. And when you write your statement of purpose for the sake of scholarship application, you are not interested in, they are very often not interested in your life history. As my family is poor, I come from a poor background, except if you are talking about that challenge from the perspective of how you overcame the challenge and how that has built resilience in you such that even when the going gets tough on the PhD, you will be tough enough to overcome it. Actually, one professor in my school once told us a story of how he got his own PhD in his time, and he said his country there used to be a lot of wars in his country. So he grew up like seeing wars. So when he was applying for the PhD, one of the things he told them about his toughness and how he can actually push through the PhD was the fact that he has seen toughness like from his childhood. He has been through more tougher situations, and then that was part of the stories that he used to get a PhD. But when you are writing, you are not trying to center your message around a begging position, like please give me this, pardon me, or have mercy on me and give me this scholarship because I so much need it. I need it more than every other person. No. In writing that way, you are being self-centered. And as much as possible, when you apply for scholarships, you take away self-centeredness and focus on the team. What can you bring to the team? What do you know about this team? And how can you make this team better and help the team to achieve their goal? And by the time you have that shift of mindset, you find that your SOP, your cold email will be focused around the skills you have that are relevant to that team and the areas of the team that you can bring improvements into. That is what every supervisor wants to read. They are not interested in that generic email or that generic template that somebody sent across and everybody fills it, or even the generic template that ChatGPT gave you. You can of course use ChatGPT to refine the things you write, to look for grammatical errors and avoid them and correct them and all that, but not from the position of using it to generate the entire work that you're going to submit to a professor. They know it, they use it themselves, they've tried it over and over, and they know the kind of content it brings out. So you want to avoid that. In your cold email, you want to focus on what an introduction, what makes you the outstanding candidate, and what is your passion for it. You show enthusiasm, you show your skill, you demonstrate your skills, and then you introduce yourself in reverse order. Of course, introduction comes before what you know about the team and what you can contribute to the team, and then about your enthusiasm and the closure. In the closure, you will always have to probably request for something. But here again is the deal. A lot of people don't get responses from scholarship from supervisors, not because the supervisors are not interested in responding, but because what they are asking the supervisor for in the response is too big for the supervisor to address. So somebody sends out a cold email and the person is saying, oh, at the end, I am open to having, or I would like to have a 30 minutes discussion with you to further define my research interest. No. That sounds good. And 30 minutes looks like a short time, but remember that these people are getting these emails from like hundreds of people, 50 persons, and they are also busy themselves. Now, you want to start first by asking that person questions like that you would like to know if he has any additional space within his team that can accommodate you in the team. So that's like a one-line answer. The person can say yes or the person can say no. So you want to ask questions at the closure that are easy to draw out a response. Like the response is not going to take the supervisor a whole paragraph to write. That way you stand a better chance of getting a first response from the supervisor. And most times when you've gotten that first response, it shows that the person is interested in you or that your research interest is viable, even if the person doesn't have the funding. All right? So the questions are going to come at the end of this, please. If you ask a question now, the chats are just going to keep rolling. I'm going to miss it. But the questions are going to come at the end. Keep the questions, and as soon as we finish the presentation, you will go on with your questions. So that's what you do. You don't want to write too long. You don't also want to write too short. However, there are instances when a scholarship position is already advertised. For instance, you go to jobs.ac.uk, you will see a lot of fully funded positions from the United Kingdom. You see the name of the principal supervisor, you see their email, and you will see a detailed description of what they want. Some of them will tell you that, oh, we need you to submit your CV, we need you to submit your certificate, We need you to submit this when applying, and we need you to use this particular email line to say the headline for your email should be interested in scholarship or interested in this funding. They give you that particular title of your email. You want to stay true to that particular instruction. You don't want to go on and start being creative with your subject line on the email. You want to stay exactly with what the professor has said, because if you don't stay with what he or she has said, it shows that you don't know how to follow instructions, and that's a very big red flag for anybody who is going to a PhD. All right, you don't want to go around that. But if the person has said, I need you to use this particular subject line, use that particular subject line. That's the way you lay a good impression on the heart of the professor. First impression is very, very important. I've got emails from some of us, I don't know if any of us is watching this now, that doesn't even have a subject line. If I was a professor, you send me an email without a subject line, the most likely thing is that I won't read it. And that's the way most of these supervisors operate. So if they have said this is the subject line, follow the subject line. But where the email is entirely cold, that is, they have not advertised the position, they've not given instructions on how the email should look like, you want to send an email, and your first impression should be that subject line, because the subject line is what the person sees first. So if I am applying for a position, and this is a question to us, if you are the professor, and two people are applying for a position, and one person says, the person has read through your work, both of them. One has seen that you are doing maybe childhood education or the challenges in childhood education, and the person is sending that email and says, maybe bachelor's degree holder in childhood education, interested in PhD, something like that. The other person comes on to say interested in PhD as his own subject line. The other one has written something that reflects your area of specialty. The other person has just written something that shows his or her own interest. Which of these two people are you going to pay more attention to, his or her email? I want to see your responses in the comment section to just know that what we are doing is sinking in and we are getting the point. So which of these two people would you consider his application? One person says childhood education expert applying for scholarship. The other one just says interested in scholarship. And your area of expertise is childhood education. Which of these two people are you going to consider for that scholarship? Which of the emails will you be tempted to read more? I want to see responses in the comment section. Is there anybody who is hearing me in real time? If you can, just drop a message in the comment section and I can see it. Somebody is saying, well done and thank you for the PhD live seminar. Thanks so much for joining as well. Can anybody tell me in the comment section who they would engage? I can't see any responses just yet. I want to see at least one response before I move on to be sure that the message is getting clearer and clearer. Thank you so much. All the people who are dropping positive feedbacks, I sincerely appreciate that. Yes, so somebody says the first one. Any other answers? Any other answers? Somebody would say, okay, the person with the interest of the supervisor. That's correct. If I am in the shoes of the professor as well, I'm going to take that person who has written something that reflects my area of interest, because that shows that the person is creative. But as I mentioned, you don't want to get too creative where the position has already said this is the way you should apply. All right? So let's walk around that way. Now, we have talked about a lot of things today, and I want to move on to the next part of the presentation. And I've said some of these things, but I want to just re-emphasize certain things. You need to diversify your area of interest, be able to be flexible enough to take on new areas of interest that are within your broader area of interest, and you need to be able to leverage your background and experience. So when you are applying for a scholarship, you need to think about it and say, okay, I'm going to apply for this scholarship today, but what are the skills I have, either from my job, from my education, that will give me an edge on this scholarship application? For instance, for some people, if I'm going to apply for any scholarship today, I'm always going to be tempted to talk about my publications. because those publications deliver immediate feeling to the professor that this one has capacity for technical writing. And if fortunately I have a publication that is directly or closely related to that person's area of interest, I'm even going to copy the DOI of that link and include it there. Not a general link. I'm going to copy the DOI of that particular paper, because the DOI is more or less a trusted link. So the person knows you are not trying to send him any email, any link that could be fraudulent or anything. I'm going to copy that DOI, which is what every one of them know, and then paste it there for the person. Because I am trying to leverage what I have, to use what I have to get what I need. For some people, in the place where they were working, they've managed projects. And every PhD is actually a project. So that project management skill is something you can transition into the PhD. Now, there are other cases where somebody has worked in a place where that person had juniors that he had to train. He has helped people build capacity before. You have not worked as a lecturer, but you are applying under a lecturer, and you know that this supervisor may want to use you to support his classroom demonstration sometimes. So you are highlighting that part of you, that you have trained this number of people before professionally under a structured training program. These are some of the silent skills that you are picking up along the process of your work that you may not even know that are relevant to your PhD applications. All right, but you want to sit back and think of your past and what you have done. Now, for those of you who are still in your bachelor's and joining us today, my instruction to you is to become intentional about taking records of your achievements, taking records of the things you do, whether it is volunteering, whether it is a project, whether it is anything at all that you are doing. Take close and detailed record of what you are doing. And every time you take your records, look at it from the perspective of the STAR approach. All right? Always look at your record keeping from the STAR approach, and always look at your engagements. Even when you answer questions in interviews, look at the STAR approach. It's a very powerful tool. Whoever developed it did the world some great good. Master it, and then always think in that framework when you are keeping your records, because if you keep your record following the STAR approach, it becomes easier for you to use as case histories or examples when you are doing your scholarship applications, when you are doing your interviews, and even when you are applying for jobs. When you start a job or the job you are working on now, don't wait until you leave the job to start preparing your CV for the next position. Start building that CV for the next job now, because now you are operating in real time. The records are clear in your mind, and you can get the records better documented at this period. Many people have what it takes to win scholarships. What they don't have is a record of those things that they have. And because they don't have the records, the applications become vague. The applications become just like every other person's applications. But if you have your records and you keep your records, you find that you have a lot of things that you can leverage on to apply for scholarships. Leverage on your background, leverage on your experience. Your background can be on the area of what motivates you to go into that research. And like I said, PhD is beyond just your book knowledge. PhD is about resilience, is about passion, is about enthusiasm, and that's what I'm going to still talk about very shortly. Now, you need to pay attention to the details of the application. There is this historic example that I like to use. There's this woman, a doctor of computer science, Rita Orji is her name, very popular on LinkedIn. She's based in Canada, and she's doing research there. I think she's a professor now in Canada. And that woman wrote a post one time that 50% of those who apply for the jobs, for the scholar, for the opportunities that she posts on LinkedIn or in different places, do not follow instructions. I said 50%. 50% of people who apply for the positions that she advertised do not follow instructions. That particular position, that time. So following instruction is not as easy as I love to follow instruction, and so I'm following instructions. Following instruction is something you have to be intentional about. If they said subject line should be this, don't deviate from it. If they said stay within this number of word count, don't deviate from it. If they said send us a CV with your transcript and your certificate, don't send an email with your transcript but without your certificate. Send everything according to the requirement. If they said name your CV this particular way, say maybe Chukwuemeka at chukwuemeka.cv, follow that instruction to the letter. Don't go about applying for things without following instructions. This also goes back to CV. Paying attention to details means that you understand the key requirements. You read the description of the application, where it has been advertised. If it has not been advertised and you're looking at it from the cold email perspective, research that professor very thoroughly so that you have a detailed understanding of what the person needs and how you can come into it. This is very, very critical. Pay close attention to all the details and follow all those details without avoiding anyone. Always remember that talking to alumni of any scholarship, talking to former students of any professor will always give you good insight. That's what helped me choose a good supervisor. Because when I was going to choose my supervisor, I spoke to like 3 students of the school where I currently am. And that's what helped me avoid another school that is troublesome. Because I had a friend in that other troublesome school, I spoke to him and he told me things about it. And even though I had admission there and they were following up, I had to reject it. Because I knew the school from an insider in the school. So always learn to talk to alumni, talk to former students, and all of that. Now, let's talk about some interview tips, because every funded PhD that I know of comes with an interview, sometimes 2 sets of interviews. One interview being technical, the other one being like a general human resource kind of interview. But if you are going for any interview, don't form tech bro and don't dress well, for instance. Like, I am a tech bro, because I am a tech bro, I don't dress well. I dress casually to work, and because of that, I'm going to dress casually to the place of my interview. No, please, if you are going for any interview, remember that you are going for an interview that is going to pay you, like I mentioned earlier, that is worth about 80 million naira in actual sense, in total value, in gross value. This is a lot of money. And if you are going for, nobody appears before that kind of position without being serious. At least you should look serious in some way. So prepare well, dress formally when you go for your interview. This is tip number 1, because it's going to give you goodwill from the interviewers. The moment you see the interviewers, you always need to get that first good impression. Give them that first good impression to draw goodwill. It makes your interview process smoother and easier always. Number 2 is, in your interview, show resilience. Don't just show that you know it. Show that you have the capacity to stay through the process. Show enthusiasm. You are not going there because you need money. You are going there because you are passionate about this particular research area. That's why I said align your research interest. Do that alignment and convince yourself. Develop the enthusiasm, whatever it takes you. But you need to showcase that you are enthusiastic about the position and you are resilient. You have the resilience, the toughness to go through it, because a PhD always has something that is called stuckness periods. My boss those days, he will tell you that if you do a PhD, there will always be a point of stuckness where it looks like you are not moving forward and you are not moving backward. You are stuck. I've had that moment. Every PhD student will always get into, in fact, if you don't have your moments of stuckness in PhD, then you are probably doing a master's degree. All right. At the time, the man was saying that he was proposing to write a paper on the theory of stuckness himself and one other guy. That theory of stuckness, as it affects PhD students. And if you do it, that's going to be a really good paper, because it happens to practically all PhD students. So you need resilience, you need enthusiasm. Then during your interview, you need to practice your elevator pitch, right? Think of this as though you are going for a job. If somebody says, tell me about yourself, don't go, oh, my name is Augustine and I come from Nigeria and apart from coming from Nigeria, I'm uniquely, specifically from this state. In my state, before I grew up, in my, you see what is going on here. Somebody is having too many M's. If you follow this conversation from the beginning, you will count the number of times I've said in the presentation process, because you need to understand something at your fingertips. You need to be able to, you need to train yourself to the point where your mouth and your brain can synchronize, so that your brain is not thinking faster than your mouth. And you see, I talk really fast when I do presentations like this, because the information is so much and I need to pass out so much information. And because of that amount of information, my mouth needs to understand my brain and be able to talk at the pace of my brain's thinking. None of them should be faster. Now, for people who find this is not something that happened overnight. It's something that I had to work on intentionally. So if you're one of those people who go you can't make a complete sentence without an M, that's not a very positive thing to have. It's something you can train on. Be intentional about it. Every time you speak and the M comes in, ask yourself, why did I say M here? What could I have said differently to replace this? There are times when you take moments of short pauses. You pause a little bit. This is not a public speaking class anyways, but we can do that at some other point. It's not, you can always take a little pause and then think, take a little pause, think. But the point of the matter is, try to train yourself to reduce the number of M's in your statements. And practice your elevator pitch, because that first statement that you give, that introduction that you give, can determine whether the person is interested in continuing the conversation or the person is not interested in continuing the conversation. And you can go for an interview and the interview is 5 minutes, and then you are good to go saying that, oh, they've not asked me too many questions. And the reason they didn't ask too many questions is because you flopped the first question. You killed their interest in the first question. There are some other times when you go for an interview and your first 5 minutes has convinced the person that, yes, this is the person I've been looking for. I'm employing this one. Straight. There are times when you go for, there are too many things that are coming to mind that I need to talk about, but let's not deviate. Let's stay focused. The point of the matter is that you need to practice how to market yourself. That's the way I will put it. And if you go through one of the videos I did in the past, I said education is not complete if you don't learn, if you don't network, and if you don't market yourself. If you don't master your learning, that's the technical understanding of what you are studying, and you don't master how to build a professional network around yourself, and then master how to market yourself to that professional network, your education has not become complete yet. Because you can get into a situation where you have 5 minutes to convince somebody that you are the right person. And you should train yourself to the point where within 5 minutes, that should be your target. 5 minutes, I am done. I've convinced this person. Any other conversation we're having is just supplemental to the conviction that I've already given this person. And it has happened to me before. I went somewhere. Let's relax a little bit with the story. So I went somewhere. The person that we had been connected on LinkedIn, we'd been chatting and all that. And the day I finally met this person, we started talking. And I could see that the person wanted to offer me a job. But the job the person wanted to offer me needed me to have finished my PhD, because the person wanted me to work full time. And at the point of that conversation, I had to pay attention to her to be able to understand that when I said I am not done with my PhD, I could see the disappointment. I could see the facial expression that this person was practically disappointed. Now, what do? Do I allow the person go in that disappointment with a job offer that was almost in my hands? Or what else can I do to sell myself and close that? Then I went like, oh, I have done something for another company before during this period of my PhD where I was sharing a job with somebody. The other person works like 20 hours, actually 19 hours, and then I work 19 hours. And two of us were combining to deliver the value that a full-time employee would have delivered. And I had to now start explaining that the benefits are this, the company had like advantage of having access to two brains and all that and all that. And then I could see that revival of hope. After we left the place we were sitting, before we parted ways back into the conference venue, I repeated that. And when I repeated that statement, she went like, okay, do you mean that you can do 20 hours per week now? That was when it really sank in. And then I said, yes. She said, okay, send me a one-page copy of your CV, and the rest is history. So you need to learn how to market yourself such that the whole of this conversation was maybe like 10-15 minutes. All right, I'm not going to tell the name of the company on this live stream, but those who follow me on LinkedIn should be able to probably guess which company I'm talking about. But that was the way it happened. Practically that. There were other conversations, okay, do an interview with this person that followed it. But the baseline is you need to know how to market yourself, know when to market yourself, because time and chance are very critical in life. You need to see the moment. You need to take the moment. I think it's called carpe diem. You need to see the moment. You need to seize the moment. Do that, and then you'll be very, very thankful. Somebody's asking for my LinkedIn profile. Just look for Chukwuemeka Augustine Okechukwu, and that's it. There is a post on my Facebook page where I have that LinkedIn profile in the comment section. Learn how to market yourself. Learn how to build networks. I've talked enough about networking. And then I've talked now a lot about marketing yourself, because every interview you go for is you marketing yourself. It does you a lot of good to master these things now, because even if you choose to build a company in the future, that company is still going to need you to do a lot of marketing of yourself. It's very, 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 very important that you know how to market yourself. Now, let's look at this other one. The professors that you find, you need to know them. I have said you need to research the professors. I've talked about this slide before, but I just want to highlight something. There are a number of places, 3 key places where you get, or 4 places where you get, that will help you get to know a professor properly. Number 1 is the website of the university where that professor works, because most of the developed countries will have the names of their professors, the faculty members, and who the faculty members are. They have like what you may call a subsection of the website of the school dedicated to them. Then the second place where you can find out a professor, who he is, what he's doing, is Google Scholar. I discussed that one. You filter by year, you search the name of the professor, click on that name, filter by year of paper publication. It gives you an idea of what the person is doing at the moment, because again, the research interest of professors can also change over time. Somebody may have started out as an aircraft, somebody may have started out as somebody who is developing materials for aircraft engines or aircraft wings, and then moved on to somebody who is developing materials for oil and gas, because like I said, research follows the money. Where the person is able to secure funding, that's where the person's research will be concentrating at the moment. So you look at Google Scholar, you filter by year, and that gives you that idea. The other place is the people's social media platform. Look at the person's Twitter account, look at the person's LinkedIn account, mainly. You can also look at the person's Facebook account, because some professors are really active on Facebook. Look at the person on social media, and that will give you an idea. I spoke a lot about the importance of speaking to the person's current students. If I had not spoken to current students when I was coming to the UK, I probably may have ended up somewhere else, or maybe eventually ended up where I ended up now, because somehow God leads me as well, guides me and directs me on the things I do. But speak to people, and that will be really helpful. Now, on social media, when you start speaking to those professors, you don't want to be the one that is always only speaking to professors in their inboxes. What I tell people to do, which is a key component of the 5-5-10-10 strategy that I discuss a lot, is to create a situation around yourself where people can see you and see your worth and see your work and see your interest and see your research areas and your accomplishments on the social media platforms. And I want to simplify this, because a lot of people think that content creation is comedy or content creation is prank. No. content creation for a professional is beyond those things. Those ones are frivolous content creations, I would say. But as somebody who is interested in scholarship, and even somebody who is interested in a job, anytime you have interest in a job or a scholarship, become strategic. Use that 5-5-10-10 strategy very carefully. Narrow down on, if you are looking for a job, hiring managers. Narrow down on CEOs. Narrow down on managers of the kind of departments you want to work in. Connect with them on LinkedIn. I keep saying connect with them. If you don't know the difference between connecting and following, there is a video on my Facebook page that discusses it. Connect with them. Don't just follow them. Except where it becomes impossible to connect, then you can follow. Because when you connect with them, they are able to see your posts. And the reason why you are building that presence is because you want the right people to see your posts. You want them to see who you are, your capacity. You want to convince them that you are the right person to work in their company or to work under them in that scholarship. That's what you want to achieve. So you go there, you connect with these people, search for them, specifically connect with these particular people who have, I call them gatekeepers, the people who own opportunities and the people who manage opportunities. Anybody who is a manager manages opportunities, because the manager might not be HR manager, but in your technical interview, the person will be there. If you are seeing you writing a lot about your expertise in this particular thing, that person is already going to have a bias towards you. And this statement remains true, that emotion is stronger than knowledge. Emotion is stronger than knowledge. You need to have the knowledge, but if you have the opportunity to touch the emotions of people through the content you create, please do. Touch them. Convince them through your post that you are the person. And I'm going to talk more about that just shortly. You connect with the professors and the associate professors, the doctorate degree holders, and the doctorate degree students, the current students, because they are those students that you need to talk to be able to understand the insights, the insider knowledge of what is happening in that research group, who they need and who they don't need. There was a time when my supervisor was talking about needing somebody who has a proper knowledge of chemistry, who studied chemistry, not an engineer who knows chemistry, but a chemistry graduate to understand some of the work that we do in our research group. And I know that if he gets funding today, he would still be interested in hiring that chemist, because even the work I'm doing myself requires deep knowledge of chemistry, even though it's an engineering application in material science. But that's the way these things work. The students have insider knowledge they give to you, so you connect with them. But after you've built all these connections, there are 3 critical things that you need to do. Number 1 is you need to create. You need to create, that's number 1. Number 2, you need to constructively comment, constructively engage. Constructive commenting means that you come to the comment section of a post that is relevant to your field and you are adding value to it. You are either stretching the conversation or opening a new frontier of conversation. The example I like to use for this is to say that if somebody has talked about climate warming or global warming, for instance, climate change or global warming, and you are there in that comment section, and that person's post was about the impact of climate change on the snows or the ice in the polar regions of the world, you can come in and talk about the impact of climate change on tropical Africa. For instance, that the rains are becoming too heavy, we're having too much flooding at this point. You have extended the line of the conversation. That's a constructive comment. You need to learn how to do it. You don't just come to the comment section of somebody who could be your helper and you start challenging the person that this is wrong, the other one is not good, and all that and all that. No, you don't do that. Constructive comment is not you challenging people. It is you contributing to the conversation or extending the line of the conversation. Arguments have their own place, but arguments on social media will not give you the kind of help you need as a scholarship seeker. Take it from me, because I've been very active on social media for a couple of years now. Then the third thing that you do is to take advantage of the network of the people with whom you are connected. This is what it means. So you are creating your own content and you are constructively engaging, but these professors with whom you are connected are also connected with other professors. By the time they like the posts of those other professors, LinkedIn is going to also show you those posts because somebody in your network has liked them. Those people are like your secondary network. Now, you go to the comment section of that post. If it's something useful, try to drop a message there. Try to drop something constructive there. So you are doing three things. One is you are commenting on posts that you find directly relevant. You are posting by yourself. And then you are taking advantage of the comment sections of the posts that the people who you follow or who you connect with are interested in. Because it's like a web. You are interested in this person is interested in the other person. There is if you do set theory in maths, you will find that there is an intersection somewhere between you and that third person. I believe this makes some sense, but this is like the slide I'm talking about now is a subsection of my networking tutorial, my professional networking tutorial. So if you want to have a better insight into it, you go to YouTube and find that tutorial. Now that we have talked about all this, the question becomes, where can I find these PhD scholarships? I promise to do that, but the list is endless. So what I've done is to classify the list into segments. First of all is the websites of the universities. Second place where you find these scholarships is websites of scholarship awarding organizations. Remember I said in the beginning that it's not only universities that award PhD scholarships. There are organizations, Gates, Cambridge, Commonwealth, PTDF, a whole lot of government organizations. They all offer this PhD funding. So you need to also master the websites of those places so you can check regularly. Sometimes the ones that are not funded by the universities are very cyclic. They repeat themselves around the same time of the year every year. So, and the requirements don't really change much. That means that if you master the requirement today, you can start preparing from today ahead of the scholarship application for next year. If it is all these institutional scholarship like MasterCard, like Commonwealth and all that, they don't really change that much. So the websites of those organizations will also show you PhD funding. The other place where you can find them are scholarship blogs. There are a lot of them. Opportunitypedia, opportunities.com, several scholarship blogs that what they do is they pick the scholarships from these websites of universities and websites of these organizations, and then they repost it for people to see, for those who subscribe to them and those who follow them to see. These are other places where you can get them. But the other thing I like to do is to look at the scholarships from LinkedIn, because LinkedIn kind of helps you, gives you a compilation. It's kind of, everybody comes in there to submit their own, to post their own opportunities. My professor will go there and post that he has opportunity. The other professor goes there to post. So if you have followed that 5-5-10-10 strategy very well, you'll be in the loop of many of those professors and you'll be able to see scholarships when they are posted. You can also do a Google search, and in this age and time, you can do your searches using the AI tools. You can go to ChatGPT right now straight away and ask ChatGPT to provide you a list of open PhD opportunities in your field in the United States of America, and to provide the verified websites of those universities. ChatGPT will do it for you. It will do it. Just ask it tell it to verify that those websites are correct and accurate. It will give you the website. You can then click into the website to find the more details about it. Grok will do it. Many of the popular large language models will do this same thing for you. These days, I'm becoming more connected to searching using the AI tools than I do using the normal Google search. But Google search is also good and can help you do this thing. Google is also integrating AI into their search engines, and that could be helpful. But there are some standard websites where people from different countries or from different universities in one country come to post their PhD opportunities. Number one, I'll start with the country where I stay, is jobs.ac.uk. I said I'm going to send out the slides. I'll hope to send out the PDF of the slides maybe after this or tomorrow when most people will be online. Then the second one is findaphd.com. Findaphd.com is bigger. It gives you PhDs in other places apart from the UK, including PhDs in the UK as well, but jobs.ac.uk is focused on the UK. It gives you PhDs, it gives you postdoctorate positions, it even gives you academic positions on jobs.ac.uk. You will always have the opportunity to filter by your discipline and sometimes filter by who the scholarship covers. Is it for the British students? Is it for students of this particular citizenship, or for everybody? If it says international student, it means everybody across the globe can apply for it. There is another one called gradschools.com. Gradschools.com, that's another website where you can find PhD positions. There is phdscanner.com. That's another website. There's also a website called phdportal.com. That's another one. And there is this one that I discussed recently, leverhome.ac.uk. These are all websites, and they fit into the general conversation that we've had today. Now, I am in my typical last slide for presentations before we take questions. And in this slide, what I typically do is to motivate. So I start with a motivation, and then I close with a motivation, and then these motivations are general motivation, but drawn from the Bible. Now, I talked about how you can create your accounts and then start creating content. The reason why I talked about that is because you need to be in what I call the open box. And I call it the open box, and many people choose to stay within the inboxes of professors. That's just in the cold email section. When you send cold emails, you are sending one cold email to one person at a time. But if you decide to stay in the open box where you create, where you can explore your creativity better, you can write one thing and it gets seen by 400 and something thousand people, or by 1 million people, or by 200,000 people. This live stream, for instance, at the moment on Facebook, there are 35 people or 34 people watching this live stream. Imagine that all of these people are professors, and I've just created a content that talks about my research interest, and it aligns with the research interest of these people. I'll be showing myself to the face of that population. That's the open box. That's what I call this. My term, actually. Maybe I should go and write get copyright over it. It's an open box. There is a diagram you will see that shows you like a funnel. The impact funnel is what I call it in my networking classes. So you are in the inbox at the bottom of the funnel, but at the open box, you are at the top. You are reaching more people. The closer you come to the open box, the more people you are reaching, and the more impact you are having. The more you are able to convince people, whether you are looking for a job or looking for a scholarship, or the more you are even able to build influence. And one day I'm going to spend time and talk to us about the influence economy and why you should be creating content as a professional. All right? People who see me creating content, who talking on Facebook, think that I am one street boy somewhere. But I am an oil and gas engineer. I am a professional, a qualified oil and gas engineer with specialty in drilling and well abandonment. That's a very unique area in oil and gas. But you know, there is a reason why you yourself need to also be creating things professionally, because there is an economy that is called an influence economy, in which the world already is and will get deeper in. We'll talk more about it one of these days. But if you are interested in that influence economy conversation, you drop a message in the comment section. Just say influence economy. Now, when you have mastered these things, you also need to understand that every learning and every knowledge becomes useful at the point where you start putting it to practice. If you don't put all these things we've said today to practice, they are useless. They will not be helpful. They will not be useful. They will not help you in any way. So, You also need to remember that 80% of success is in showing up. This quote is not mine, it's from Woody Allen, somebody, I think a British man, that 80% of success is in showing up. The way you show up as a scholarship seeker is to apply. That's your showing up. One of your critical ways of showing up is to apply for this scholarship. So show up. Don't sit back, fold your hands, and not apply for anything. Show up and apply. All right? Now, and I want to now remind you that this world in which we live is too distracted to remember the man who doesn't show up. This is me extending that quote of Woody Allen. 80% of success is in showing up, and the world is too distracted to remember the man or woman who does not show up. You can be the most intelligent person in your community, the most intelligent person in your country, but you are not ruling your country because you didn't show up. You are not leading the conversation on renewable energy, even though you have expertise in renewable energy, because you are not showing up. The world forgets about you to the point where the world will seek the opinion of the non-expert who shows up over the opinion of the expert who doesn't show up. The person who shows up, who the world knows about a particular thing, is the person they look for. That's why if you watch the video I made about LinkedIn, about profile optimization on social media, I talked about the value of the content you create in showing your profile to people who recruit for the kind of jobs that your posts are optimized for. There are times when people reach out to me on LinkedIn and are asking me if I am available for a well abandonment job. Sometimes it could be in the UK. There has been a case where the email came from, the message came from somebody in Abu Dhabi, I think Abu Dhabi. And these are all because I show up. I show up on that area. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you will see a lot of posts about decommissioning. And sometimes it's now a question of, you are the professional, you know the technical jargons that is used in your industry. How do you simplify these things to make it accessible and understandable to the general audience, such that they can be able to react to it, they can be able to engage to it, and then the post gets shown to more people, because that's how you dominate the space. That's how you become the subject of conversation in your area of expertise. So the world is too distracted to remember the man who doesn't show up. And like the Bible says in Matthew 7:7, you ask and it shall be given unto you. You seek and it shall receive. You knock and it shall be opened unto you. I always tell people that the problem is not sometimes that you don't know how to knock. The problem is not also that the door doesn't open sometimes. The problem is, for many people, the door opens and they are either afraid to enter the door, or they get into the door and they don't know what to say. That's why I said master how to market yourself. All right, these principles are founded in scripture, and they are also founded, many of them are also founded in natural wisdom. We're an academy for a reason. We teach. I don't just come to post scholarship opportunities. There's a reason why I spend time to teach certain things, and there is a wisdom that drives some of the things I teach. And some of the things I teach are unconventional. Because if you keep doing the things that are conventional, you will keep being lost in the pool of the 100 other people who are doing the same conventional things. So sometimes you need to think out of the box and figure out how to go about your ways and to get the things you want to get. When I came to the UK, I had to think out of the box to be able to do a professional job as a student. To work, the company I worked for in the UK is much bigger than the company I was working for in Nigeria. But I had to take one thinking out of the box, of course, praying, divine help, divine favors, and all that. But there was that energy, that passion to seek something, that desire to knock on doors. I'm not going to tell you the full story, but there were knockings. That, like, knocking on doors doesn't mean physical doors these days. You can knock on doors on social media and tell people what you are looking for and all that. But when the door opens to you, be bold to walk into that door and do the best you can to act right when you get into the door. Market yourself properly, and when you get in, be the right person that position needed. Romans chapter 9 verse 16 says, "It is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. I always encourage people to pray, because sometimes two other people are as qualified as yourself. What separates you from the other two is the favor of God, not necessarily because you are the better candidate. And this was me today, and this is Academy of Scholarships and Transitions. Now we open the floor for questions, and I will do it this way because we are streaming on 2 platforms. Let's go this way. People on YouTube, ask your questions. Then we take 5 questions from YouTube. If there are up to 5, then we'll come to Facebook and take 5 questions. The guys who are watching on Facebook, please don't start asking your questions now, because the chats will keep coming and I will struggle to pick your questions later. Let's focus on YouTube now. You will learn from the questions that people are asking on YouTube, and then the guys on Facebook will come back for those who are asking questions from Facebook. Okay, first question on YouTube from Official Shekina. She's saying, explain 5-5-10-10 strategy. Okay, so the 5-5-10-10 strategy it's a concept I developed, and the reason I developed that concept was to let people, first of all, to make people understand that a scholarship must not be tied to one country. You are seeking a scholarship, don't tie all your efforts to one country. And when I look for scholarships as a person, I concentrate on the European Union, United Kingdom, United States of America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Any country that is outside of these 6 that I mentioned, I am not very passionate about that place. Like, I am more passionate about these places that I mentioned. However, the 5-5-10-10 strategy says that you should identify 5 countries that you are interested in. If you ask me, I would say the European Union as a region, I would call it a country. I would say Canada, I would say United States of America, I would say United Kingdom, and then I would say Australia, if you ask me, my personal opinion. But that does not mean that New Zealand does not have a lot of opportunities, or some other places does not have several opportunities. There are lots of opportunities in Saudi Arabia, lots of opportunities in Abu Dhabi, but there are some other things I look for that some of these other, even in China, that some of these places may not give me. So for you, find 5 places and choose. Don't follow my own bias. All right? If you look for these 5 places and they are too competitive for you, find other places that may be less competitive, but as a minimum 5 countries. In those 5 countries, find at least 5 schools. All these numbers are the least, the minimum. Find at least 5 schools that offer your course. And when you find those 5 schools, then look for 10 professors, 10 maybe professors, doctors, lecturers in that school, and connect with them. And after you've connected with them, or even before you connect with them, start working on creating at least 10 contents about your research interest, about your skills, about your passion, and about your career profile as a whole. Who you are that could convince somebody to give you a scholarship or give you a job. I said this 10-10 strategy is useful for scholarship seekers, is useful for job seekers. If you are looking for a job, look at jobs. For instance, you really don't have the right to work in, you may not have the right to work in 5 countries at a time, but if you are looking at your own country as the only unit of country, find at least 5 companies that you are interested in. Find at least 10 people who work in that company, from the gatekeepers and managers of the owners and managers of opportunities in that company or in those companies, and then at least try to create 10 posts that feed them when they come to your profile. Because you send out a connection request, some people will go and look at your profile. They want to see, who is this person? What kind of things are you creating? The post that you have created will convince them to accept. That post you have created can resonate with them, because this is your research area, is your skill, is your capacity, is what you are trying to do, and all that kind of thing. It's maybe you summarizing research papers of people, citing them, tagging them. It's very easy to create. You can read up a professor's research paper and then write a post about it that you just read a work published by this particular professor, tag that professor to it, and these are the key findings of the work, and you consider that these other areas are worthy of possible additional exploration and all that and all that. So you have created content. And that content is professional. That content shows your expertise, it shows your knowledge, and that could be a game changer for you. The 10 content will feed them, but that is the minimum. You can create many more as possible. So I see people who talked about the influence economy. This is too deep for me to explain today. I like to walk through it from historical perspective. I might need to plan to do another video on it, or maybe a different live stream. Somebody says, please, I just started my master's this October and would like to start my PhD immediately I finish. Where do I start? This is a very good one. If you have just started your master's, you are in a very good position to start chasing the PhD now. I'll tell you the story of my friend. My friend came to Robert Gordon University to do a master's degree during COVID. And when he weighed the options available after graduation, he told himself that he wanted a PhD. He didn't want to jump out and go take the post-study visa and then get into the pressure of the post-study visa after 2 years and then start struggling here and there to meet up with this or that. So he decided to say, I'm going to do a PhD at the end of this master's. He started working on it. What did he do? This is something I recommend for everybody. Look for the supervisors, look for the people in that your school that are securing funding or have a history of securing funding. You can always find them. They're going to come and teach you in your class. Then every one of them that comes to teach, look at their profile. There are sometimes when the big guys who really secure funding are no longer teaching. They are just mostly in research. Go to that section of your school's website that talks about that's dedicated to your department. Look for the faculty members, click into their profiles. You will see their projects, ongoing projects, past output and all that. You will see all those. Then start identifying them. Once you identify these people, what you need to do is align yourself with them. Your graduation project for your master's degree, your thesis should be in an area that they have interest in and that you know they have funding in. And once you have identified them, don't wait for your course coordinator to assign you a project supervisor. Go and speak to that person or those people who you have identified in your school. Talk to them. Tell them that, hype them. Tell them how their research is very good, how you've read through it and how it's interesting to you, how you want to do your master's thesis on that in this particular area because you want to finish this master's and be able to proceed to a PhD. And you are interested actually in any funded positions that may be available at the time, convince them, make them see why they should take you as their master's student. Because by the time the person has worked with you and you have delivered good quality work, then that supervisor will have no alternative than to engage you. They might decide to advertise the position, but that advertisement is more like to fulfill all righteousness. The person will be biased towards you. Because he has worked with you, you have shown your workings, you have shown your capacity. That's like a low-hanging fruit. But don't also stop there. If this question is from somebody in the UK, you need to start also looking at jobs.ac.uk. You don't need to wait until you graduate from the masters before you start applying. Start engaging them now. Because by the time you graduate, the next opportunities will be for the next admission cycle, which then means that you need to spend money to go get yourself the post-study visa and maybe switch back to a student visa after the scholarship comes through. But if you start early and do the unconventional, remember that most of the people who came with you to do the masters now are not even thinking about this PhD. Most of them they are not thinking about it. They are not even interested. They don't even, when you tell them, I see comments, the comment section of my post, and I understand that people really, people are really far away from reality sometimes. So many of them are not thinking about it. You are beginning to think about it now. That's like another option in addition to the jobs you are going to apply for. And even for jobs, if you are in the UK, this is the season to start applying for jobs that will start around August next year. especially graduate level jobs. That's the way they operate here. For most of the big companies, you will see their graduate recruitment sometime around this October, November, December, maybe shorts off around January, and then they start interviews. The start time for those graduate recruits will be sometime around August or July. So follow these steps. Now, if you are following these steps and you have the exceptional grace to publish at least a literature review, or go and present that your master's degree thesis in a conference. It doesn't matter whether the conference is in the UK, is a small conference, a big conference. You are laying a big impression in the heart of that supervisor. Don't allow the course coordinator to assign you a supervisor. I know what in fact, when I did my own master's and my bachelor's, this was what I did. I took by myself. I saw somebody in the school who had practical industry experience. He was lecturing. He was like a part-time person in the school, and I went to make him my supervisor because I wanted somebody who has practical industry experience to supervise me. And some of the things I understand, some of the reasoning I have about the industry today is from him, because he had this research, like his approach to research was not an academic research perspective. He was looking at research from an industrial perspective, applied research, and I loved it. So I hope that answers that question. Somebody is asking, thank you so much, sir. My question is as regards research interest flexibility, does it not send a negative signal to potential supervisor when I have several different research interests on my... No, you are not. That's not the point. You are not going to write that you have research interest in 1, in 2, in 3, in 4. That's why I said research this potential supervisor first. The research interest flexibility is that if I find a professor whose research interest is in petroleum engineering, is in production of oil and gas, and my bachelor's degree is in oil and gas engineering, and this person's research interest is enhanced oil and gas production. Say my primary research interest is drilling wells for oil and gas production, but this one is working in an area that is already, assume the well is already drilled and producing, and you want to enhance production from that well. I know that I have the capacity to work within enhanced oil production, even though that's not my primary interest, but it's within oil and gas. So we find common ground there. I am not going to say on my CV that I have interest in drilling, because this man who has got that funding is a production person, and the funding he has is to study better ways of improving the productivity of oil and gas reservoirs. They apply this to your own field. I'm using my field because that's the easiest way to explain it. Now, when I'm sending it to him, my interest in drilling is not even going to come up in the conversation. I am not going to mention it in the application. I'm not going to mention it during the interview. Nothing concern the man, concern my drilling. All right? Because this is what he has secured funding for. I have the option of either aligning with his research interest or looking for those who have research interest aligned to mine. And if you are unfortunate and your research interest is drilling, you know in drilling, anybody in oil and gas, that drilling does not have so much funding going into it. The same applies to some other professions. There are areas of research, they are good, they are fascinating, but there's no funding going into it. So you can go into that if you had your own funding. I am doing well abandonment in my research because my research is funded by PTDF. And what PTDF said was any research that is relevant to the oil and gas industry. Drilling is relevant to them. Enhanced oil production is relevant to them. Well abandonment is relevant to them and will even become more relevant as we progress gradually as the industry matures in Nigeria. So the point is, if you have your own money, stick to your research interest. But if you don't have your own money, be flexible. Flexibility doesn't mean you write all the 10 research interests that you have. No, research that particular professor you are sending that thing to, and then indicate that area of his as your primary interest, at least. Then, the other thing is, I need to also emphasize this. You don't use one CV for every application. That's a big mistake. Don't use one CV for every application. When I make applications, the career summary section of my CV changes. I modify it to suit that particular application. There are some applications I may be submitting and I need to even take out some work experience because they are not relevant to the position. And the position just needs like a one-page CV, so like I need to delete those parts of it to make it simpler or smaller. That's what that one is. Can I go for a PhD from bachelor's degree directly? This is official Shekina. Yes, you can. You can go from a bachelor's degree straight to a PhD. It's common in the US, it's available in the UK. You can do it in different countries. Yes, you can do that. Somebody says, yes, I am in the UK. Okay, I believe I addressed that already. Please, do you do mentorship or how can someone reach you? Typically, you can reach me on WhatsApp, but the problem is that at the moment I'm just too busy. That's why I'm spending this time today to ensure that we deliver this quality the way we want it. But I am a very busy person. When I say busy, I mean like very, very busy person. I struggle with time. And because of the stage of my work, I don't do one-on-one mentorships at the moment because it will just be me promising too much and delivering too little. I really don't have time. Sometimes I'm back to the house like 10 p.m. and then out of the house like early in the morning. That's why if you notice on Facebook, many of the videos I do them walking because like time no today like that. Then somebody says, okay, so Facebook people, thank you for cooperating and for your coordination. Let's take some questions from Facebook. The guys on YouTube, you can learn from those questions, but after these questions, we'll be calling it a close. And this video will be here on this YouTube. I think I'm going to try to get the recorded version from Facebook and then maybe also upload it on YouTube later. But this is Academy of Scholarships and Transitions. If you have any questions on Facebook, please, this is your time to type your questions. All right? Remember that the request is copy one link. If you are on YouTube, just copy that link to the general scholarship discussion or any link that I find very interesting on our YouTube channel, copy it and share on your WhatsApp status. That's just what, if you do that, it's good enough. It's as good as a thank you on for the page. It helps your friends and it also helps the page. Generally, I don't like to work alone anyways. So Facebook people, I'm waiting for your questions. If you have any questions, please just drop them right now so that we can close. All right? Any questions on Facebook? Funny enough, this was supposed to be a YouTube event, but somehow the streaming app on YouTube failed us, and then the Facebook people are the ones who can actually see me. Any questions? Ask your questions now before we leave. So this is 9:53. We've run this session for more than 2 hours, and by the next 7 minutes, I should aim to close to go do some other things. Somebody is saying, how can someone go the 10 years route with PhD since MSc plus PWS plus PhD is like 9 years? Okay, the thing is, if you want to, this question is coming from somebody in the UK, so let's just be aware of that. If you are in the UK and you want to stay through the 10 years route, let's say you do a master's degree. First of all, that's 1 year. If you are doing a thought-based master's, then you take a PhD. Your PhD can be 4 years. That's 5 years. Then you do your post-study visa for a PhD. At the moment, it's 3 years. So you are getting 8 years, actually, on your PhD and master's degree route. But the typical thing that people who do PhDs do is not to go through the route what the people who do PhDs do is to go through what is called a global talent visa. The global talent visa, because when you go through the global talent visa, after 3 years on the global talent visa, you qualify for what is called indefinite leave to remain. So somebody can do 5 years on 3 years on the global talent visa. Some people do 5 years on it, but after 3 years on global talent visa, you can qualify for what is called indefinite leave to remain in your 4th year. So what most of the PhDs that I know do is to attempt to get that global talent visa so that they don't have to wait for the 10 years period before they get their ILR. I hope this helps. Then somebody else is saying, you talked about the use of AI when writing proposal. Is it advisable to use ChatGPT in trying to write very good English, but all the points will be yours? So what you would do is, or what I would advise, and this is even what a particular professor was advising, is write the work by yourself. They want to see that natural connection with a human being when they read your work. But if you finish writing, you can go to ChatGPT, upload that work, and ask ChatGPT to highlight areas that need improvement in the work, or to highlight grammatical errors in the work or spelling errors. Because again, people don't also like seeing errors in your write-up. But ChatGPT can help you to highlight all of these things, and once you have them highlighted, then it does not change the natural flow of the work. It retains that natural flow, but also helps your English to become better. If that is what you're asking, then that is doable. But don't use ChatGPT to generate that content. It can generate ideas for you. I have used ChatGPT to generate ideas before. You can use it to find guidelines. You can use answerthis.io. That one will even give you citations. And all of these AI tools, but don't copy paste. Like, don't just lift things from there and paste into your work. If you use them to write, then you need to paraphrase that thing that they wrote for you into a human-like format. I believe that was helpful. What are the chances of a dependent when I am searching for PhD full scholarship? It doesn't matter whether you are dependent or you are not dependent. You can, once you qualify for the PhD, you qualify for it, and nobody is going to deny you a PhD because you are a dependent of somebody. It doesn't affect your chances at all. It is a must to write international exam. I believe is it a must? Not always. There are times, like in the UK, for instance, where you don't need to write some of these exams. Any link to university where I can gain experience, and I don't know what this means, like experience, in what sense? I don't know, but links to universities will always be available everywhere. Would you wish to speak about masters obtained from University of Applied? David Samba, the question is not complete. I don't seem to get that. Then somebody else is saying, I possess BSc Economics Nigeria, MSc Economics Nigeria, and HRM UK with over 25 publications. How can I secure PhD scholarship in economics? First destination will be to look at that university where you did your HRM in the UK. Might be your soft landing. Look at the professors you worked with before, reach out to them, send them an email, just ask them if they have any funding available at the moment, or that you are interested in this and this is the area you want to work in. If you research them very well, you might be able to find the areas that they are interested in and the areas that they are willing to work in at the moment. Once you have been able to identify that, then it makes the job easier. You can look at jobs.ac.uk, but at the moment, jobs.ac.uk/PhD, but at the moment, the Gates Cambridge scholarship is also open. That's another scholarship that I can apply for that has PhD. And I think economics should be a good area, or should have some good research areas that can be easily funded by that scholarship. The next question, I am English teacher in the Republic of the Congo. I have masters of teaching. What are the scholarships available for someone like me? several scholarships because education is part of the global, what's it called again? The SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal. Education is one critical component of it. So people in education, you have opportunities that you can pursue. And this is the last question we found on Facebook. All right, thank you all for joining us today. Someone said on YouTube, this should be the last question I will answer before I close because it is 10 p.m. already. Please, I want to apply to a school that says on their portal, securing a supervisor is not required for the PhD, but your CV will be passed around. How do I go about it? The supervisors is not a compulsory, as they have said clearly. But what you can do is, since you know that your CV will be passed around the supervisors, it doesn't hurt to go and contact them or to go and reach out to them on LinkedIn. Because like I said, if you have done those 10, they have a lot of information about you that you cannot even squeeze into your CV. They would have seen certain things about you that you can't squeeze into your CV, and that will be helpful in convincing them about your profile when they get your CV passed to them. All right, so this was it, the very last question. We've run this for 2 hours, 30 minutes, longer than planned, but I believe for a very good cause. Academy of Scholarships and Transitions for a reason. 30 people watching us right now on Facebook, 19 people watching us now on YouTube. I want to encourage every one of you to go to our YouTube channel, copy the link to any video that is of best interest to you on our YouTube channel and post that video on your WhatsApp status. Or if you are a member of any WhatsApp group of students, you can copy that link. When you log into our YouTube, there is a video that plays automatically. That's a video that teaches scholarships. You can copy the link to that particular video, post it on the WhatsApp group that you belong to or on your WhatsApp status. And that will be good enough for a thank you. Academy of Scholarships and Transitions for a reason. On the matters of scholarship, I think we're the #1 on these platforms. See you on the next one. And try to engage with all the things we post. Lessons will always be there. The commitment is not to post things that will just waste your time. We'll do the best we can to ensure that every single post we make has value and adds value to you or to somebody you may know. That's why you want to share our posts, you want to engage, you want to like, you want to comment, you want to repost, because this academy will walk people to success. And your success is coming. Don't forget to carry God along, or don't forget to depend on God on your journey to greatness. See you on the next one. Bye. You'll be a Sakai.